There is a kind of darkness that doesn't come from the outside world. It doesn't come from tragedy or chaos or loss. It comes from a deeper place, from the soul's quiet insistence that something in your life can no longer continue the way it has. You feel it before you understand it. A heaviness, a slowing down, an inward pull that you can't explain, a sense that you've stepped into a dim corridor inside yourself, and the way back to who you were is already gone. You're not depressed, not exactly. You're not broken, not entirely. It's more like the light inside you has been dimmed to a soft ember, and you don't know what it wants, or why it has led you here. But Jung would tell you something most people never hear. The soul grows in darkness, the way seeds grow underground. The darkness you're in is not the end of you. It's the beginning of something you can't name yet. This kind of darkness is not punishment. It's preparation. Your psyche pulls you inward when the outer world is no longer aligned with your inner truth. It withdraws your energy from the things that exhaust you. It makes you lose interest in distractions. It quiets the noise you used to drown in. It slows your thoughts, your desires, your impulses, until all that's left is the faint voice you've ignored for years. You don't enter this darkness by choice. You arrive here because something you whispered enough pretending, enough pleasing, enough surviving, enough carrying the weight of a life that doesn't feel like yours, enough abandoning yourself. You can't see it yet, but your soul is trying to regrow the parts of you that life stripped away. There is a sacred intelligence in your sadness, a quiet authority in your emptiness, a purpose in your exhaustion. Darkness is a place of recalibration, a place where the version of you that you've outgrown begins to dissolve, and the version waiting beneath the surface begins to take shape. But growth, real growth, doesn't look like blooming. Not at first. It looks like death. It looks like confusion. It looks like retreat. It looks like feeling lost. It looks like stepping into a room with no windows, unsure of how long you'll be there. You think you've fallen behind. You think you've lost direction. You think nothing is happening. But the opposite is true. Everything is happening. The darkness is not empty. It's full. Full of the parts of yourself you buried. Full of emotions you never allowed to speak. Full of truths you weren't ready to hold. Full of potential you were too afraid to claim. People misunderstand darkness. They think it destroys. But Jung knew its secret. Darkness creates. It shapes. It matures. It reveals. The light shows you the world, but the darkness shows you yourself. You don't learn who you are when everything is easy. You don't grow when everything is bright. You don't transform in moments of comfort. You transform when the soul pulls you into the places you avoid. The silence, the stillness, the shadows, the memories that ache, the feelings you've numbed, the desires you've denied. In the darkness, distractions fall away. Your persona cracks. Your defense is lower. Your truth rises. It can feel like breaking, but breaking is how light gets in. It can feel like losing yourself, but you're losing only the version that was killing you slowly. It can feel like being alone, but solitude is where the abandoned parts of you finally find you again. Darkness strips you down so you can finally see what's underneath. Your rawness, your innocence, your fears, your longing, your depth, your hidden strength, your unfinished becoming. The soul brings you into the dark because it knows you could never see yourself clearly in the glare of the world. And the truth is, part of you needed the darkness. You needed to step away from the noise. You needed the old habits to stop working. You needed the old life to feel too tight. You needed the identity you wore for years to start cracking. You needed the people who drained you to fall away. You needed to reach the point where the only place left to go was inward. That's what darkness does. It corners you so you can finally face yourself. Not the story you tell. Not the performance. Not the persona you polish to be accepted. Your real self. The one you lost in the rush of surviving. And when you begin to feel that subtle, quiet ache, the one that sits behind your ribs, the one that doesn't scream but hums softly, that is not the beginning of despair. It is the beginning of awakening. Because the soul knows something you don't. To grow into who you are becoming, you must pass through the places you've been avoiding. Darkness is not the enemy. It is the threshold, the place where your old life loosens its grip, the place where old wounds rise to be healed, the place where old identities lose their shape, the place where old dreams whisper again, the place where the child you used to be reaches for your hand in silence. You fear this place because it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like losing control. It feels like sinking. It feels like being swallowed by something you can't define. But growth rarely announces itself as growth. It disguises itself as discomfort, as fatigue, as sadness, as confusion, as emptiness, as slowing down, as stillness. Stillness is not stagnation. Stillness is transformation without movement. The darkness teaches you things the light never could: how to sit with your truth, how to listen instead of react, how to feel instead of flee, how to rest without guilt, how to belong to yourself again. Everything the world told you was weakness becomes strength here. Your sensitivity becomes insight. Your sadness becomes intuition. Your quietness becomes clarity. Your loneliness becomes connection to yourself, to the soul, to the unseen. In the darkness, you become intimate with your own existence. You learn who you are when no one is watching. You learn what you want when no one is influencing you. You learn what hurts when you stop numbing. You learn what matters when everything else falls away. It's terrifying. It's sacred. It's necessary. Because the soul does not grow in comfort. It grows in the dark. If this content making sense to you, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for your support. There is a moment in the darkness when the world feels very far away. Not lost, not abandoned, but muted. As if someone turned down the volume on everything outside of you, so you could finally hear the quiet truth pulsing underneath your thoughts. At first, it feels like loneliness. Like the universe has stepped back and left you in a room with no doors. Like life is happening somewhere else, to someone else, and you are stuck in a pause you can't break. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to sense that this aloneness is not isolation. It is intimacy. Intimacy with yourself. You begin to meet the emotions you've outrun for years, the ones that sat on the edges of your life like shadows you refused to acknowledge. Grief that never spoke, fear you dismissed with jokes, longing you minimized to survive, anger you swallowed to stay liked, dreams you silenced because they felt too fragile. In the darkness, they come back, not to punish you, but because you finally stopped running long enough for them to catch up. And when they do, something unexpected happens. They don't overwhelm you. They introduce themselves. This is who I've been all along. This is what you never allowed yourself to feel. This is the truth beneath the performance. This is the wound behind the reaction. This is the longing behind the numbness. It's unsettling. It's raw. It's intimate in a way that feels almost forbidden. Because no one teaches you how to be with yourself like this, without distraction, without noise, without performance. But Jung knew something most people never recognize. Your soul doesn't grow when you avoid your truths. It grows when you finally walk toward them. The darkness becomes a mirror, not one that reflects your face, but one that reflects your being. The parts of yourself you've denied still look at you from the glass. The parts you've forgotten raise their heads. The parts you're ashamed of step forward. The parts you're proud of soften. The parts you've never met yet stare back with quiet familiarity. Everything you thought you lost is waiting in that reflection. You discover that the darkness is not empty. It is populated. Populated with versions of you that were abandoned. The child who wanted to be held. The teenager who wanted to be understood. The adult who wanted to be free. The dreamer who wanted to be seen. the soul who wanted to be whole. They gather around you like ghosts returning to claim their place, not to haunt you, but to come home. And you realize you have spent years being afraid of things inside you that only ever wanted your attention. Nothing inside you is against you. Not the sadness, not the scattered thoughts, not the fear that grips you at night, not the emptiness that opens in your chest, not the restlessness that makes you wonder what's missing, not the fire you suppress, not the vulnerability you hide. All of it, every shadow, every achy, every trembling emotion, is your psyche's attempt to speak. The soul does not shout. It waits. It whispers. And when you ignore it long enough, it brings you into the darkness because silence is the only place it can be heard. You start to understand why the old distractions stopped working. Why the things that used to numb you don't numb you the same way. Why the life you built began to feel too small. Why the mask felt heavier and heavier until you couldn't lift it anymore. Darkness is not where you break. It's where you stop pretending. Pretending to be strong when you're exhausted. Pretending to be fine when you're aching. Pretending to be unbothered when you've been hurting for years. Pretending to be self-sufficient when you're starving for connection. Pretending to be someone your soul no longer recognizes. In the darkness, the pretending falls away, not as a dramatic collapse, but as a soft unraveling, a slow release of everything that was never true. And then there is quiet, a quiet so deep it almost feels like the world has exhaled around you. In that quiet, something strange begins to happen. You start telling yourself the truth. Softly at first. I'm tired. I'm hurt. I'm lonely. I'm scared. I need something different for my life. I miss who I used to be. I don't know who I'm becoming. You whisper these truths into the dark, and the dark does not judge. It does not demand. It does not rush. It holds them, the way the earth holds seeds that have not yet learned how to grow. And slowly, this honesty becomes a kind of nourishment. The soul grows in truth. It cannot grow in denial. It cannot grow in performance. It cannot grow in the light of the persona. It can only grow in the darkness of sincerity. You begin to notice the small shifts, the way your breath settles deeper in your body, the way your shoulders loosen, the way your mind stops fighting you, the way your emptiness becomes space instead of pain, space for new life, space for new thought, space for emotion to rise without shame, space for clarity to return in its own time, space for your real self to stretch beneath the surface of your old life. You start recognizing the difference between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is the fear of being unseen. Aloneness is the moment you finally see yourself. The darkness teaches you that you are not empty. You are spacious. You are not lost. You are in transition. You are not failing. You are shedding. You are not done. You are preparing. And when that realization settles into you, you lose some of your fear. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough to breathe again. Enough to lean into the darkness instead of resisting it. Enough to let it reshape you instead of fighting it. Enough to trust that your soul knows something your mind does not. You start to feel the subtle guidance emerging from inside, a pull toward honesty, a need for rest, a hunger for meaning, a desire for connection, a longing for what is real, a quiet inner voice saying, "This is not the end. This is the root." Because every root grows in darkness, not in the sun, not in visibility, not in clarity. Growth begins underground where no one can see it, where even you cannot see it, but it is happening. It has been happening since the moment your soul dimmed the lights on your old life and whispered, "It's time." There comes a point in the darkness when something subtle begins to shift. Not a sudden flash of clarity, not a breakthrough, not a revelation that arrives with trumpets and certainty. It's quieter than that, gentler, almost invisible. It's the moment you realize the darkness isn't suffocating you anymore. It's holding you. Not tightly, not possessively, but the way the earth holds a seed with gravity, with patience, with understanding. You're no longer trying to escape yourself. You're no longer afraid of the silence. You're no longer running from the feelings that used to send you spiraling. Something inside you has softened. Or maybe something inside you has finally stopped resisting. Either way, you begin to feel a strange familiarity with the place you've been avoiding. You recognize the darkness now. It feels like a room in your own home. One you never entered. One you never cleaned. One you pretended didn't exist, but a room that has been waiting for you all along. This room does not judge you. It does not shout. It does not demand that you be anything other than what you are in this very moment. It simply waits. Waits for you to sit. Waits for you to breathe. Waits for you to tell the truth, even if the truth arrives as a whisper. I'm tired. I'm hurting. I'm lost. I'm longing for something I can't name. I'm not who I used to be. I'm afraid of who I'm becoming. I'm changing. And I don't know how to carry it. You speak these truths into the dark, and for the first time in your life you hear them. Not through the noise of expectation. Not through the filter of performance. Not through the lens of fear. You hear them as they are, simple, human, honest. And with honesty comes something unexpected relief. You discover that your soul didn't need solutions. It needed sincerity. It didn't need answers. It needed presence. It didn't need perfection. It needed permission to feel. The darkness becomes a space where you learn to hold your own humanity without punishment. You forgive yourself for not knowing better. You forgive yourself for coping the only way you could. You forgive yourself for all the times you abandoned your needs just to be loved. You forgive yourself for the dreams you postponed. You forgive yourself for the mistakes that still ache when you remember them. You forgive yourself for being imperfect, because perfection was never the point. The point was truth. The point was wholeness. The point was the reunion with everything inside you that life forced you to leave behind. And the deeper you move into this honesty, the more you realize that the darkness was never here to break you. It was here to gather you. To gather your fragments. To gather your forgotten selves. To gather the pieces of your soul scattered across years of survival. To gather you into one place, one moment, one self. Wholeness is born this way, not in the light, but in the folds of the dark, where the soul stitches itself back together with threads made of honesty. You begin to notice that the darkness has a rhythm, a pulse, a breath. It isn't empty, it's alive. Alive with your potential, alive with your suppressed emotions, alive with your unlived life, alive with everything that has been waiting for your attention. And slowly, very slowly, you begin to grow roots here. Not roots that trap you, roots that steady you. Roots that connect you to the truth you've been circling around for years. You were never meant to bloom without breaking. You were never meant to rise without descending. You were never meant to shine without first dissolving into your own depths. Every soul that has ever transformed has done so in the dark. Because darkness is not the absence of light. It is the workshop of becoming. It is where your strengths are forged. It is where your intuition wakes up. It is where your wounds finally speak. It is where your ego softens. It is where your heart learns to open again. It is where your soul begins to remember its own voice. So you stop fearing the nights where you feel heavy. You stop fearing the days where you feel lost. You stop fearing the emotions that rise without permission. You stop fearing the silence that surrounds you. You understand now that the soul grows through these things, not despite them. It grows through surrender. It grows through honesty. It grows through pain that is finally allowed to breathe. It grows through the moments when you stop pretending everything is fine. It grows through the nights that feel endless. It grows through the seasons where nothing makes sense. It grows through the vulnerability you once avoided. And one day, perhaps without realizing it, You open your eyes in the darkness and realize you are no longer afraid of it. You sit with it. You breathe with it. You let it be part of you. Because you understand now, this darkness is not your enemy. It is your womb, your soil, your sanctuary, your transformation. And in that acceptance, something miraculous happens. You begin to feel the stirring of something new. Not happiness. That comes later. Not clarity. That comes slowly. Not light. That appears gradually, not all at once. What you feel first is strength. A subtle strength, an inner steadiness, a grounded sense that you are no longer breaking. You are rebuilding. You feel your soul stretching beneath the weight of your old life. You feel your intuition resurfacing. You feel your boundaries sharpening. You feel your desires becoming louder. You feel your honesty anchoring you. You feel your heart waking from its long sleep. This is the moment of growth, not visible yet, but undeniable. Not loud, but real. You realize you are no longer the person who entered this darkness. You have shed too much. You have met too much. You have felt too much. You have grown too much. There is a new shape forming inside you, a shape that fits who you truly are, a shape that was impossible to build while you were busy performing for the world. The soul grows in darkness because darkness is the only place where you cannot lie to yourself. Here, everything false falls away. Everything real rises. Everything hidden becomes visible. Everything broken becomes a doorway. Everything painful becomes a teacher. Everything lost becomes a seed. And eventually, the darkness begins to open. A crack. A seam of light, a breath. Not because you forced it. Not because you rushed it. Not because you demanded it. Because you surrendered to it. And the soul, having grown quietly in the unseen places, finally begins to bloom. Not as the person you were, but as the person you were always meant to become. You don't escape the darkness. You emerge from it. Different, truer, stronger, more whole, more human, more soul. And when you look back, you realize the most important truth of all. The darkness didn't swallow you. It shaped you.